Welcome back, listeners, to a new episode as the new standard. And as always, we have my partner in crime to my left. What's up, Big Neil?
It's a bleak week, bleak in Pittsburgh, in the
Not dark
surrounding
week.
area, certainly in Steeler Nation. A demoralizing week 1 loss. We're rebounding from that, though, as we titled on the show. Steelers need to do a better job on the weighty downs. Um, all of the downs in week 2 versus Cleveland, coming Monday night at Acra-Heinz Stadium Field, are going to be weighty downs because it's not a good thing to start 0-2. The last time the Steelers have been 0-2 and made the playoffs was 2002. You might remember that as the year Cordell Stewart got benched at halftime, incidentally, against Cleveland in week 3. And Tommy Maddox comes out of nowhere to rebound the team, actually drive the ball down the field, and they won that game and went on to go 10-5-1 AFC. Then was this the first year of the North? I think it was the first year of the North.
I think
AFC
so.
North champions, and beat Cleveland again in the playoffs. That's a lot of things that had to happen behind the 8 ball. So for the Steelers to get 1-1, to reach the potential that we thought that they had heading into this season, they're going to need a big divisional win against a Browns team. I hate to say it, Steelers fans, is a lot better than they were last year. Their defense is popping. That's going to be a real problem for a Steelers offense that looked absolutely terrible last week. Huge week for the Steelers offense. Huge week for our buddy Matt Canada. How do they respond to that, Lance?
It's going to be very interesting. And before we get into our breakdown, want to say big up to Mel. If Mel's out there listening, what's up, Big Mel? And also want to say a happy birthday to little Mel, to Mel's son. And I believe that Mel and his wife just recently celebrated an anniversary. So big up to Mel and
That kid,
uh, and congratulations. And Chris Osu, let me throw that up here again. We will pray for you, Chris, because you will be at the game, but you are going to bring a good luck, muy suerte, to the Steelers as you represent uh, the new standard at the program. And if you want to listen again, go to YouTube, do a search for the new standard, do a search for Lance Williams and or Neil Coolong, and you can also catch it via podcast by doing a search, however you get your podcast, the same way. Well, I mean, Neil, the big story, obviously, on both sides of the ball is the injury with Cam Heyward on the defensive side of football, who has a hamstring injury and is subject to be out for quite a few weeks. And we also have the injury to Deontay Johnson. So let's look at the Cam Heyward injury first. And it's always about snap replacement, not necessarily who starts. It snaps, who's going to play, and what defenses and what packages. And how do you think the Steelers uh, rebound from this? And what do you think the snap distribution looks like for replacing Cam Hayward?
I think it's so early in the season; it's hard to tell. As it was reported, Cam Heyward has a groin injury. He's going to have surgery on. I would expect the Steelers to place him on injured reserve. They tend to do it a little bit later, just to not tip their hand for whatever that's worth. With that, he'll be out at least 4 weeks, and he's expected to miss as much as 8 weeks. Keanu Benton, the rookie out of Wisconsin, played a pretty good amount in Hayward's absence. I'm not sure if that was going to be planned, if that's the position they wanted him to play, but I thought he looked pretty good for a rookie. He had a couple pretty big plays in there for a defense that really didn't make a whole lot of big plays. There's going to be a loss without Cam Heyward on the field, both from a talent perspective, a production perspective, as well as a leadership perspective. It's hard to replace that, if at all possible to replace that. But one thing we said leading into this season, Lance, many times, one of the biggest strengths this team has is the depth of their defensive front seven. They're challenged on that immediately. And I feel Benton earned a lot more playing time than, say, Montravius Adams did. Not that they would necessarily play in the same spot, but they have versatility. They have the ability to work guys around in different spots. I'm not exactly sure what the distribution would be, but I would expect Benton to play quite a bit. He looked really good, especially for a rookie. That's a bright spot to a defense that really got plowed all day long. The development of the younger player. But as far as replacing Cam Heyward goes, I mean, nobody's going to do that. That's not going to happen. You hope he can come back as quickly as possible and he's ready to contribute at a high level like he has been in his entire career when he does come back. But Benton would be the kid to watch. Beyond that, we'll see what they do as far as making the move on the roster. When Heyward goes on IR, they'll pull somebody else up. My bet would be Braden Fiocco from the practice squad would get a nod in there just to replace a body. Who knows what they'll do though? So it's up in the air.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting when you look at the snaps here. Benton played 29 snaps. Leal played 26. Loudermilk played 31 snaps. Montravius Adams played 34. Ogunjobi played 43. And Cam only played 14 in the game. Looking at the game, I looked at it several times. And each time I watched the game, the Niners were beating my enthusiasm away for this season. They were beating it away with every single drive. As I looked at the game, I was a little bit concerned about Loudermilk. Loudermilk did not play particularly well, and that might be another issue for them in terms of, replacing snaps and guys getting more snaps. I thought that Loudermilk in the game was not very good in terms of run defense. But before we jump into our last points about Sunday's game and our breakdown for the Browns game, what's your thoughts about the Deontay Johnson loss? How was that going to affect this offense? And, who do you think is going to replace him, so to speak, in the starting lineup and take his snaps?
If we were to look at position-specific depth for the Steelers this season and make a determination based on that, the value of the players who are there, I know fans don't want to hear this, but Deontay Johnson he's extremely difficult to replace within this offense for what he does, for what they ask him to do. He's been their primary receiver for 3 years. That's a lot of targets that you got to replace. And I know everybody loves Calvin Austin. He made a great play against a guy who's not in the NFL anymore during the preseason, but Calvin Austin is not Deontay Johnson. You're not going to be able to replicate that. You need other guys to step up. The game plan is going to have to change a little bit. Oddly enough, for the amount of in-game injuries that Deontay Johnson has had and then eventually come back on the field, he hasn't missed a whole lot of time. This is a significant test for a Steelers offense that really doesn't need any more tests. They got enough of them in front of them right now. They're going to struggle. My guess, I think Pat Freiermuth is going to end up getting more targets than anything else. From what I saw of George Pickens, who does not play the same position as Deontay Johnson, he didn't look bad. I don't know how improved he looked from last year as far as a route runner goes, but to be fair, they really didn't get a whole lot of time to do anything. They barely had the ball. They were down a bunch early. Whatever game plan they might have had was gone fairly quickly within the first half. So offensively, I don't know if they even showed what they were going to do with Deontay Johnson, let alone without him. So, that's going to be up in the air as well. Knowing the Steelers, they're going to want to run the ball. I don't think that's going to work against Cleveland. They're in trouble. This is not a good matchup for the Steelers. And to lose two key players, there's some depth to replace Cam Heyward. There's not good depth to replace Deontay Johnson. And you mentioned DeMarvin Leal. He got hurt in that game as well. We don't know where they are as of the recording now in terms of his injury. I agree, although I've always really liked Isaiah Loudermilk. It was not his best performance. I'm not sure how often they're going to want to call his number. He's probably not going to play 30 snaps, and I don't think he was expected to play 30 snaps in this game. These are two real tough injuries. I think Deontay is probably worse than Heyward just because I don't trust the depth behind him at all. I think there's some ability behind Heyward, although Heyward does have a good step ahead of Johnson in terms of the overall value to the team. So these are two real tough guys to lose heading into a significantly important game.
Looking at the offense, how they deploy it, how they deploy their weapons, do you think they go more 12 personnel, and that's one running back, two tight ends, two wide receivers? Do you think they go, 11 personnel with the three wide receivers being Pickens, Robinson, and Austin? Or, somehow do you think, how do you think how do you think it's gonna look? How are they gonna divvy that up? I'm just looking at what their weapons, and like you're saying, I mean, with no Deontay Johnson, that's a big hole. I mean, you're talking about your skill players are, who receive the ball generally are Pickens, Muth, Robinson, Austin. That's I, I don't know. I'm thinking like you. Like I'm not. That doesn't give me warm and fuzzies. Uh, what do we see? A lot of 12, 11.
It's hard to tell. We didn't get to
Yeah.
see really what they wanted to do against San Francisco. They didn't have the ball. They were in a hole early. Their quarterback, I've said this a couple times. I can't come up with another creative way to say it, but he couldn't hit water if he fell out of a boat. He was awful, and people want to blame the scheme. If the pass isn't catchable, I don't know what you want him to do. They were open. Plays could have been made. I think you had a couple there that maybe the receiver could have, really helped out. But when the rubber meets the road, it was up to a quarterback to deliver the ball. That's the way the game is played. Pittsburgh's failed to do that. Because of that, I don't think we got a good sense of what they wanted to do, what the distribution was going to be. Freiermuth, for example, I think would have gotten the ball a bit more in a different, more positive situation. I think if they can maintain some competitive balance with Cleveland early in the game, we will probably see a bit more Freiermuth and a bit more Allen Robinson, who I thought looked pretty good for a player who hasn't really played a whole lot recently. Good role on the team. It's not that they will lack receivers. The question is what they want to do, where they want to go with the ball, and
exactly.
not to straw man the whole thing, but can your quarterback deliver a pass that any receiver can catch? I don't care which one. Can he throw the ball accurately? He struggled tremendously with that. Maybe he was nervous. Really hard to hear that on a guy's 13th NFL start, and not something I want to talk about. If he was nervous in week one at home in the daytime, what's this going to be like on Monday Night Football? That's a problem in my mind.
Yeah, I don't think he was nervous. I think it's that weird combination of week one. They got punched in the mouth. It started going really fast. And I think that the staff, Kenny, the defense, the crowd, me, you, all of Steeler Nation got punched in the mouth and was seeing stars very quickly in that game. And we were all out of sorts. Is there anything you want to say again to close that game before I make my last little point for the game before we jump into our Browns breakdown?
Review of the film wasn't any better than watching the game. They were completely out of sorts. I am not vertical line blame guy. I don't like to find the one and argue against somebody else's failure because this one was more important. It's beside the point. Tomlin said this the best. Everybody failed. That it was a horrible game. They were really, really bad. The most important guy on the field is the quarterback. And Kenny Pickett played perhaps his worst game. Not what you would have wanted to see. I felt going into the season, he was going to get over the way he started last year. He's right back at that spot. It's very similar to the Eagles game, very similar to the Bills game. Inaccurate passes. He's rushing his mechanics. It was a poor passing game, and they X'd themselves out of a lot of drives and a lot of downs because their quarterback didn't deliver on simple stuff that he should have been able to. An NFL quarterback makes a lot of the plays that Pickett failed to make on Sunday. Can he rebound from that against a team? I'm telling you now, Cleveland's defense looked at least as good as San Francisco's did. And that's a statement. because San Francisco's got a damn good defense. Cleveland's they're lit up. They're going to be a problem. And Pickett can't throw them out of trouble if he can't stay ahead of the chains. They're going to get whipped.
And it's going to be interesting because Cleveland, I believe, in this game is coming out in the new all whites. I think for this Monday night game. So Cleveland's going to be fired up. My last point I wanted to make was I wanted to give a couple numbers: 13 of 15, 184 yards, 14.2 yards per catch. Brandon Ayuk was 8 of 8, 129, 16.1 yards per catch. And I believe Brock Purdy in the game, I think his yards per attempt were around 12. And it begs the question, particularly when I watched that Jets game, Monday night, when I looked at the Jets defense, and I think the Jets have an elite defense, it made me ask the question, can a defense be elite with average corners? And it's going to have to be much better than it was in game one. And a lot of Ayuk stuff is they were just tearing up what the Steelers were running. Ayuk was running in the wide open windows, made a great catch against Patrick Peterson in the corner of the end zone, a back shoulder. But the question is to me, it's like, can they beat elite with average corners? Because I think the corners are average, and it's going to be interesting. And I want to say something real quick. When I rewatched the game, I get what people were talking about with Levi Wallace. Good Lord, when he missed that tackle against Christian McCaffrey, I don't know what he was doing.
His worst play. It wasn't even his worst play.
Yikes!
I hate being that guy. I'm not trying to be the hyperbolic fan, but I would believe if there was a story that came out today that Levi Wallace took money to play against the Steelers on Sunday, I'd believe it.
Yeah, that was
weird. I'm saying that as objectively as I can. He was awful. I mean, there's a difference. You miss a tackle, things happen. People think that coverage is completely about just locking into one guy. There's a lot of things that come with that. It's not that simple, but he had Ayuk on his own often. Ayuk, 8 targets, 8 catches. He's not catching the ball 5 yards down the field. He averaged, 15 a catch? His average depth was like 10. Wallace didn't compete the entire game.
Yeah, it was weird. It was
Porter if Joey Porter is 7 snaps compared to Wallace's 60 or whatever it is that he had, if the difference between the two is that big, there's a real problem. Because Wallace was.
Yeah, it was.
Cleveland noticed. I promise you, Cleveland noticed.
They're going to be
gunning after him quite a bit. And Peterson wasn't exactly impressive either.
He's going to have to do the 2 C's. He's going to have to catch. He's going to have to, cover, and he's going to have to tackle because he showed up. Wow. I mean, that McCaffrey play. But let's jump into Neil Coolong's game 2 cool points. What are you looking for, in this week 2 from an offensive perspective? Let's just take that game 1 as a complete mulligan. What are you looking at for the Steelers offense going up against this Browns defense?
Let me couch all this by saying year in and year out, week 1 gets it feels like it gets weirder. There's a lot of strange stuff that happens across the league in week 1. The biggest sense of improvement every team makes is from week 1 to week 2. You get teams like Dallas that clearly came out in mid-season form. San Francisco, for everything we've ripped about, we've criticized Pittsburgh within an inch of its life as far as their week 1 performance. You do need to give San Francisco a lot of credit. That's a damn good football team. They executed out of their minds. That's Super Bowl caliber team for sure. Dallas played at that level as well. We saw them performing brilliantly. If their opponent didn't play well, okay, it's not results based. Look at what they did to achieve what they got. You see how good they are. So San Francisco, excellent opponent. They punched Pittsburgh in the mouth and knocked them out in round 1. I also understand the stigma of the Browns. I don't want to hear it. I get it. I'm watching what I saw of them defensively with a new coordinator who happens to be one of the best defensive coordinators the game has seen in 3 decades. They're not going to be easy to move the ball on. They can get pressure. They're fired up. They are well coached. They are well disciplined. Considering where they were last year, they were a defensive dumpster fire. I mean, Cleveland was awful defensively last year. Nobody associated with the Cleveland Browns would tell you otherwise. It's why they brought in Jim Schwartz, probably paid him more than any other defensive coordinator is making. The impact is noticeable right away. And Pittsburgh, for what we saw of them offensively, I don't like their chances at all in this game. I don't. They might not get 10 points. I mean, it's at home. You wanted to think that was a factor. Clearly, that hasn't been a factor for the Steelers the last couple of years. They don't play better at home than they do on the road. It's irrelevant. It seems like anyway. 40% of the stadium were 49ers fans. It's not like it even matters. What's it going to be like when Cleveland comes to town? I don't think it's a home field advantage. I think Jim Schwartz has a tremendous advantage over Matt Canada in terms of strategy, in terms of tactics, and they've got some players. I don't want to get into TJ versus Garrett. I'm so sick of that argument. They're both Hall of Fame level players, whether you like it or not. Myles Garrett is a Hall of Fame level player. He's not an easy guy to block. He's had huge games against Pittsburgh in the past, and they've loaded up around him. They've got a great scheme, and you saw it against a very good offensive team in Cincinnati. Shut him down. Completely shut him down. Cincinnati couldn't do anything. I don't, where I am sitting today, I don't see what Pittsburgh is going to do that's going to be any different. That's just my vantage point. I hope that's not the case, of course. Things can change because, again, you see a tremendous amount of improvement from week 1 to week 2. And you didn't have to look very far to find a problem that Pittsburgh needed to fix. It shouldn't be too hard for them to be able to sit down and go over everything to adjust to that. But Cleveland is an excellent defensive team.
So you're saying that Renegade is not going to help the Steelers on Monday night?
If there's a year to retire that, this is it. It's like, this is over. It's not the same thing anymore. It led its, everything has a shelf life. The song itself isn't even remotely popular anymore.
No, I'm gonna disagree. Everything does not. Well, there's one thing. If everything has a shelf life, there's one thing that does not have a shelf life when it comes to sports, and that's the wave. Man, I saw the wave at a baseball game this summer at an Angels game. Man, the wave will never die. But let me switch to Lance's game 2 glances, and let me take a look at the defensive side of football. I think when you look at the Browns, I mean, to give you my Nipsey Hussleism, I think it's just simple. If you want to get the dub, I mean, you've got to stop Nick Chubb. I mean, they are an outside zone play action running team. I think when you look at them, their foundation is the running game. Everything works off of Chubb and their ability to get the running game going. They're physical. They have great pass catchers in terms of Njoku and Amari Cooper, and they have a really good offensive line. So the Steelers absolutely know what they're going to get from a defensive perspective. They're going to get a steady diet of play action, and they're going to get a steady diet of Nick Chubb. And looking at Nick Chubb's numbers against the Steelers in his career, 9 games, 141 rushing attempts, 653 yards, 4.6 yards per carry, 2 touchdowns. And those runs, 33 of them resulted in first down. So, if they want to win this game, they have to stop Nick Chubb. And it's going to be very difficult. They're going to have to tackle much better than they did in the game, as we saw. They're going to have to be much more tied in. And that's why the loss to Cameron Heyward is so big, is because they're going against a division rival who's gotten off to a good start and a team that knows the Steelers very well. And it's a team that's tough and physical, regardless of what we think about Cleveland. So I think it's going to be a very difficult game for the Steelers defense. It's going to be very difficult, and it's going to be interesting to see, how many snaps Levi Wallace plays. It's going to be very interesting. They're going to have to make a lot of adjustments going into this game. And this is a game where I think they will look a lot better. I think what you said, Neil, is correct. They'll look a lot better in week 2, but I don't know if it means they get the dub. I mean, when watching that game 1 again, a lot of really rusty. Robert Cotting, big up to friend of the program. Robert Cotting just threw this out here that Larry Ogunjobi might not be totally healthy as well. So tough
He
start to the
wasn't.
season.
We knew that.
Yeah,
He
he
was
got
hurt heading into week 1. He was the only
yeah,
one on the injury report.
and so they got beat up, they got humbled, and they got injured all after week 1. And that's the NFL. The NFL is this moving train, that's going 5,000 miles per hour every week, and things change very quickly. And optimism uh, can surely change. But not to belabor it, let me get to your prediction, Big Neil.
Week 2 predictions are the worst.
No, week 1 are.
I posted a link, and it drives me nuts that they don't make these automatic click. You can search touchdown wire Browns. You'll see what I'm talking about. Doug Farrar did a great job breaking down what the Browns were doing to Cincinnati. Not a team that has incredible pass protection. Still a team that has a quarterback that takes more sacks than he probably should, but it's not like I'm seeing the Steelers offense as a great pass protection unit either. So I think Cleveland dominates from that perspective. I don't know how great their offense is. I know they can run the ball without Cam Heyward in there, with guys still missing gaps. The operational mistakes, both offensively and defensively, the Steelers made in week 1. I think Mike Tomlin's a great coach. I think that they've got a hell of a job in front of them. And I don't think they'll be able to fix that, even with the old tried and true, just play the Browns and get everything straight. I think Cleveland's going to win this. I want to say like 2013, something like that. That might be a little higher than it should be. But how did the Steelers score touchdowns? I mean, I don't. They're not going to be able to run. They can't throw the ball anyway, let alone a good pass rushing team. Yeah, I'm gonna say 2013 Cleveland.
Marcus J has me laughing when Myles Garrett was doing crossovers.
Yeah, and he got to the quarterback in 3 steps.
He wasn't
even set. Dancing between gaps, and the guy is immensely explosive. Really, really hard to stop. You put him in a gap the way that Schwartz had him, and that's what Doug is talking about a lot in his article.
Yeah.
That he ain't easy to stop there. What are you going to do? Your running back isn't even going to get there fast enough. If you go out of shotgun, he has a clear angle. If you're under center, he might get you before you stop dropping back. You need play action to offset that kind of thing. You need to roll out a bit to help offset that a bit. Pittsburgh doesn't do those things. So I don't think we're going to be happy with this one.
I mean, the operational points are valid, because when you look at that first game, you got Muth missing blocks in the first series.
So bad.
I mean, it's bad. They did not look very prepared or very ready to play. It kind of looked like it was just too fast for them immediately, which is concerning. But to my prediction, I'm going to go the opposite way. I think they're going to surprise us all and win this ball game. Deshaun Watson, to me, is still very variable. There's a lot of variance with his play. I still don't think he's what he was in the past. I think he's looking at the rush. So I think the Steelers run the ball a little bit better. Monday night, they get some turnovers, and somehow they pull out this game. I'm going to Steelers to win this game 20-17. And let me jump into big fan of the program, Dane's prediction. He predicted Steelers 35-13. We got a prediction from Mark Sloss, who predicted 27-6 Elves. Marcus J, I'm assuming, is picking 23-3 Steelers. Monday Night Football, Mike Tomlin and his crew usually is prepared, and they show up big on Monday nights. This is a big game. Noah Case got the Steelers 20-10. I think the Steelers show up. I think it looks rough. It looks disjointed in places, but I think somehow defensively they get a couple of turnovers, some sacks. They get some short fields, and they win this ball game. Again, what did I pick? I think I got the Steelers 20-17. Big up to everybody for listening to the program. Want to thank you guys again. Big up to Mel, little Mel, and Mel and his family. And with that, we're going to conclude the program. And as always, tune in, tell a friend, and subscribe. Go Steelers.